welcome to The Road Not Taken, discussions with assorted professionals with a background in mathematics. I'm your host, Ider Kikianti.
And I'm your host, Belinda Stolberg.
We have a very special guest today, Mandy van den Berg, joining us for another fun discussion. Hi, Mandy.
Hello.
So Mandy is a mathematics teacher, so we're very excited to have her today because we think teacher is a noble profession. So we really want to hear her experience. She's currently teaching at Pretoria Boys High School. She's taught in many schools, not just in Pretoria, but also in KZN and in Australia. We believe in Hobart, I think. Is that correct, Mandy?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. And some of the students she taught also have won mathematics competitions and so on. And also, Mandy is part of the UP mathematics family. She is married to Professor John van der Berg. So she's a family to us at UP. So, Mandy, thank you very much for agreeing to join our series of Road Not Taken. We think that teachers have so much impact on students' lives. So we really want to hear your experience as a teacher. Well, we usually start by asking our guests to share their mathematical journey. So maybe you could perhaps tell us a story of how did you end up becoming a mathematics teacher? Why did you study mathematics and so on?
Yes, well, I hope I'm not going to disappoint you because I always was going to be a teacher ever since I was a child, but I was going to be an English teacher. And because at school, I always enjoyed mathematics, but English was my passion. And when I got to university, I studied English, and then I got a teacher's loan. And then it was necessary for me to do 2 years of mathematics to actually teach it, and I enjoyed it. Although I must confess, doing a BA, that maths took up 3/4 of my time, and the other quarter was allocated to my art subjects. And actually, things only really changed when I did my teaching diploma. And when I started teaching, although I loved teaching English, I realized I really wasn't. I didn't feel that I was a very good English teacher. It was so difficult to actually, I think, make a difference to people in English. Whereas when I taught maths, I actually felt more comfortable teaching maths. And I only had 2 years of mathematics training. And then when I became a mathematics teacher, then I figured I was going to be a mathematics teacher forever. And it has happened that way. So then I ended up doing third year mathematics through UNISA. So I thought, well, I must at least major in mathematics. And then, yes, so my love for mathematics has always been there, but my teaching of mathematics sort of, the joy of it was more interaction with the pupils, and that's how I kind of honed my skills on the pupils, and actually they inspired me to actually learn more myself. It wasn't really the other way around. It was, and in order to help them, I felt that I had to up my game. So then I embarked on a more of a learning journey because of them.
Yes.
So it was. I don't think that's the norm.
No.
But that's very interesting to be to learn something with the students. I think
yes.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
When I first started teaching, because I think I was newly out of university, I was thrown into teaching the advanced. They didn't have AP maths in those days. It was called advanced program maths. It was called advanced maths, and then it became advanced program maths. And I had some very clever girls. I started teaching at Durban Girls High, very, very clever. And I thought, whoops, I'd better make sure I know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't think you can ever know everything when it comes to mathematics. It's such a vast field, and even teaching high school mathematics, there's so much that you can learn every day from.
Yes.
I just marked some papers last weekend, and boys, they have, I think they're they're very good at problem solving because they do it every day. They don't learn the stuff. They create new ways to do things. And after 30 years of teaching, I discovered new ways to do things. That's the exciting part of mathematics. Wow, I'd
That is
never
very
thought of doing
exciting.
it that way.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're now teaching at boys' school. Previously, you
Yes.
taught at St. Mary's, which is a girls' school, and you mentioned that you
Yes.
also taught at Durban Girls.
Devon Girls
And it's
High.
the
Yes.
high, yeah.
Mm.
Do you see a difference maybe in terms of teaching at a boys only or girls only school, and in terms of their reaction to mathematics? Because there's this stigma, like social sort of
Yes.
stigma, that girls are discouraged to do mathematics, or people say that girls are not
Mm.
as good in mathematics. Or what is your opinion based on your experience?
Yes, there is a difference. I think it's to do with confidence, and I
Mm,
mentioned the problem solving thing that
mm,
that girls. It's a very much a generalization because you get
of
many
course.
girls
Yes.
who are confident and um, who love problem solving, and I've taught many girls like that, and
Mm,
they I think they are mathematicians in the making. But in general, I would say that girls are more afraid of making mistakes than boys are,
Yes.
and they tend to work harder and be more conscientious. They're neater. They tend to take their studies more seriously,
mm,
whereas the boys they tend to think that they can get by on their wits in general, don't work as hard. But then there's this problem solving aspect where they like to win and they don't like to be defeated. And so when they're faced with difficult problems, they tend to employ all sorts of methods to actually
mm,
solve them, and they're good at thinking on their feet, which has its advantages when it comes to problem solving.
yeah.
I'm always amazed that they often get the easy questions wrong, but the hard questions right, because they find them more challenging and they're more used to those kind of questions because they haven't really bothered to do the easy questions.
Mm,
Yes.
So yes, there is definitely that. Of course, this is a great generalization,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I think that there is some fact to back it up.
Mm, mm,
But there's maths anxiety amongst boys as well. Many of
mm,
them they're quite good in class and intelligent in class, and then when it comes to tests, then they haven't consolidated enough, and it goes pear shaped. So it's a
mm,
problem. It is a
mm,
Yeah.
problem. I mean, I felt problems like that myself, writing tests,
Yes.
and then you forget all the basics, and you get bogged down on little
Yes.
issues, and instead of
Yeah.
seeing the big picture. So
yeah.
maths is actually it is a tough subject. It's not one of those easy ones.
No,
Yeah.
no, definitely
It's a
not.
struggle, and it just depends on where you're trying to go.
Yes.
Some people
Mm.
struggle with grade 8 algebra, and other people struggle with you, Ida, would struggle with much more complicated problems, but you still struggle with the subject.
Yes. Yes.
So I think it is
Definitely.
a struggle.
Else we'll be out of jobs, Mandy, if we're not struggling.
I
Yeah.
suppose so. Yes, that's why they say, I'm a maths teacher. Of course, I have problems. Like a textbook.
So you've mentioned, like, as a side note, that you've had some very smart girls in and Durban Girls High, that
Yes,
you've taught, and that's what inspired you to really go and do your third year in maths.
yes,
So you can maybe tell us a bit about these good students that you've had over the years. The ones that were very strong in mathematics and won some of the maths competitions that Ida mentioned. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, because that sounds quite interesting to know this.
yes. They have yes. There've been a number of girls that excelled. Actually, there was one particular girl in Pietermaritzburg. She loved doing maths competitions, and I tried to coach her, but after a while, I realized that she was way ahead of me. So I sort of put her in touch with one of John's students at the university. Um, but yes, the her name was Nicola Rule, And I don't know if she carried on with mathematics, but she was really very smart, and loved a challenge. And in a way, one doesn't want to be sexist, but her approach was quite masculine. She wouldn't be defeated by anything, and she was
Yes.
tenacious, carry on and on. And interestingly enough, it is a small world. I had a very clever girl at Durban Girls High, and she was the Ducks, and she got the maths prize, and she got the AP maths prize. And then one last year, I was at a parent. No, it wasn't last year. It was the year before last. I was at a parents' afternoon, and I looked at this woman and I said, "You look very familiar." And she said, "So do you." And then we worked out that this was the girl. This was
Oh,
Patricia
wow.
Crosby, who I'd taught in 90. She matriculated, I think, in 1991, and and she was an Olympiad. She got into the third round, which was also quite amazing to get people into the third round. And then I was at St. Mary's DSG teaching her daughter. So it is a small world.
Wow.
And yes, so there have been a number of girls that excelled at, well, mathematics in general, of course, but more on the competition side. I must say, I don't have many pupils that got into the third round of the
Okay.
maths Olympiad
Mm.
that I can think of. One tends to find that they get a commendation in the second round, and then they don't make it into the third round. So I guess things have to be worked on. You have to
Yeah.
inspire them to
Mm.
try and, because I think you have to do a certain amount of preparation to actually
Yes.
Yeah.
get into the third round, and that isn't really done at schools. Most schools, they don't tend to focus. It's more focusing on the subject and trying to get A's in exams, rather than
Yes.
maths competitions are a bit of a sideline.
I think the maths competition, the mathematics, the underlying mathematics, so to say, it's not that difficult. But the setup of the problem and the way to approach the
Yes.
problem it requires lots of creativity. So this is
Mm.
something that I think um, not in the syllabus of any mathematics in any high school in any country. I think it's this is something that is very specific. So yeah, I think even going into the third round is a high achievement. I think
Mm.
for
Mm.
them, this is something very difficult. I think the mathematics competition.
Yes, one of my third round, another child, I'm thinking back, also
Yeah.
at St. Mary's DSG, she also got into the third round, but it had absolutely nothing to do with me. She was just really, really very clever. So um, it's yeah, it's not so much the teachers coaching. I think they have to be interested themselves.
Yes.
Many of these girls attend at UP.
Yeah.
There's a course and they on Wednesday evenings, and they
Yes.
go
Yes. Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm thinking of that child. She actually, I think her name was Angela Chen.
Mm.
She did very well.
Hmm.
She also, but that's an effort that they make on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I say,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
probably wouldn't be that helpful.
I'm sure you were. Yeah. When someone asks me, for example, or maybe Belinda also have the same
Yes.
experience, like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And you say, "Oh, I'm a math lecturer at UP," and then either their reactions like, "What, really?" Or the typical reaction we get is, "Oh, but I hate maths." I don't know why you have to say it to your face that I
Yes,
hate maths,
they
but
do.
anyways.
They do that all the
But they do
time.
that all the time and said, "Really? Well, I hate maths." Like, thank you for telling us. But but I'm sure this happens, right? I'm
Mm,
sure you have students who come to the classroom and just have this. Either they say it or they they don't say it, but you can feel that they don't like the subject.
yes.
How do you combat this mindset?
Yeah, it is difficult because one can try and ignore it and pretend it's not there, but we all have different talents and likes and dislikes, but and some children are just better. It's a talent. Maths is a talent. It's not everybody can paint a picture or play the piano. And I really do think to excel at maths, you have to have a special talent. But I also think that most people have intelligent people have a certain amount of, you have to have some numeracy to get through life. And to try and make the subject fun and non-threatening. So I always find, especially with the younger pupils, that you give them, you bribe them. Bribery is a wonderful thing. So you give them little puzzles, and sometimes you make sure that they're easy, and then sometimes it's just well done, and some pupils are just happy to be told, wow, I did something well. But then there's the chocolate. So so with the junior classes, I usually have, every Friday I have a little quiz, and then if the first one to get it right will get a chocolate. And it does encourage them. And when some of the pupils that feel that they're not very good at maths, when they win this little quiz, it definitely makes a difference. They definitely develop a bit more confidence. So bribery is a good thing. Also, making your classroom unthreatening and try to make it a fun place to be. That definitely, because part of the fear is that you're going to make a fool of yourself. So you try and get across that everybody makes a mistake. And then when I make a mistake, I sort of say, oh, well, nobody's perfect. I wish I was better at maths, and then make them laugh. And so it's maths is quite psychological. You've basically got to have a good attitude. And if you feel that you're doing well, it sounds very silly, but if you put smiley faces and stickers on tests, and even if a child improves slightly, recently I had a child who'd never passed a maths test, and she passed a maths test, and I gave her a merit, and I put stickers on her page. Well, you would have thought she'd won the lotto. It was one of those sort of things. So just small bits of praise and little prizes, and make it fun. And
and I'm sure it also makes it nice for you, that feeling of like that student now passing when she hasn't been able to. I mean, that's a very
exactly.
nice, it's a very
that's
nice
why we
feeling.
teach.
Yes.
No,
it's
exactly.
not always the A's that
No.
actually make us feel good. It's that child never passed, and now that child is passing. So small,
it's a very nice feeling.
I was thinking about teaching in Australia.
Oh yeah.
And yes, that was quite a novel experience. I taught in a state school where I taught it's equivalent of grade 8 and 9, grade 8, 9, and 10, I think. And then I taught at a FET college, which is because they finished their schooling in grade 10. And so the college, only the pupils that want to go to college. So it's a much nicer place. I gave an applied maths course there, which was essentially trigonometry, and it was mainly paper 2 work. And I must say the state schools were, well, that state school was a bit of a scary place. I realized that I was privileged in South Africa to have taught at very well-run, big school, big high schools where there was lots of discipline. And this school was, it was not like that. So you almost needed to put your helmet on when you went into the teaching wasn't so bad, but you were expected to do break duties, and you'd be walking around the playground close to the building, and then they would be bashing the lockers, and it was that wasn't fun. It was not good at all. But the maths syllabus was interesting that they were starting to bring, they were phasing out, and this was those late 90s, 1997 and 1998, they were phasing out outcomes-based education. And when I arrived back in South Africa, they were bringing in outcomes-based education. So Oh dear. So, but the FET college that was, it was called Hobart College. That was very nice. That was very nice to teach there because then you dealt with pupils that really wanted to be there.
Yes.
So it was definitely a learning experience going there. I learned crowd control. I hadn't really been exposed much to crowd control, but I learned it there. So
Oh, wow.
you can't teach mathematics unless you have some, or anything, unless you
No.
have control of the classroom. So
Yeah.
one has to employ. It wasn't my mathematical skills; it was
Yes.
discipline skills that were necessary. People throwing things
Yes.
around the classroom, and yeah,
Wow.
No,
Um,
no,
yes.
yeah.
Um,
How did you end up teaching in Australia, Mandy?
Well, John had a sabbatical,
I see. Okay.
okay.
and so he was at Hobart at University of Tasmania,
Mm.
and then I wanted to teach just to get experience
Yeah,
of
of course.
of a different country, and so it was
Mm.
actually quite. I think it was a real learning experience to
Mm.
actually go there. I did a bit of supply teaching first of all,
Mm.
where you get sent to different schools. So that was just for a day here and a day there, and that was also quite interesting because you got to see the countryside and
Yeah.
Yes.
wondering whether you're going to get there on time in the morning, trying to find your way. And there were no GPSs in those days. You had to look at a map.
Yeah.
So, yes. Interesting,
I-
yes.
yeah. It's very interesting.
It's nice to have that experience, I think,
No,
definitely. Like you
it was
said.
Yeah.
So,
definitely, it definitely
yeah.
does enhance
Yeah.
because you think back, oh, this is terrible. And you think, well, oh, no, not as bad as when I
No,
was in Hobart. Yes, so let's
yes.
get a bit of perspective. Yeah. Even
um,
when I was at Maritzburg College teaching naughty boys, then I thought
yeah.
back to that experience. Thought, no, they're not that bad. At least they do, they do greet you, and
Yes.
and they do
Mm.
Yeah.
stand up and greet you and pretend to be listening to you most.
Yes.
Mm. Mm.
So the TV college that you mentioned, is that up to like matric level or what? Because you say that it's after grade 10 basically. Is it only up
Yes.
to matric-ish? Is that what it is then?
Yes, I think they're probably a bit similar to the British system where with A
Okay.
levels, so they write similar type exams. So probably a little bit beyond matric, um,
Okay.
but not much, probably about 6 months
Yes.
ahead
Mm.
Okay. So,
of
so
matric.
almost an
Yeah.
hour university level, like first
Yes, yeah.
year-ish then. Okay.
Because
Probably our
John
Okay.
first
taught
semester.
first year and said it
Yeah.
Yeah.
was very,
Okay.
there was not much difference between our
Mm.
first year and their first year.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
mm.
Okay. But you say that was much nicer to teach, obviously, than the state school. But how did it compare to for you to teach at that college and at teaching at South African schools?
Well, it was co-ed, and I've
Okay.
basically only really taught single sex schools, so
Okay.
it was
Mm.
different from that
Yes.
aspect. And what was also interesting is that I had young children, and I took them to the creche, and some of the students had children in the creche as well.
Oh
That's
wow.
actually an interesting story where that's where the name Georgia came from, my daughter's name, because
Okay.
my younger son Christopher there was this little blonde child who was he was 3 and I think she was probably about 2, and he loved this little girl. He was always playing with Georgia. And then I heard this name. He used to say Georgia, Georgia, and I thought, oh, that's a pretty name. And then when I had a daughter, guess what? I had a daughter Georgia.
Oh, that's so cute.
That is so cute. Have to get him to listen to this when it's
Yes.
out.
Yeah. And
Georgia.
George's mother she wasn't one of my students, but she was a student at the college.
Yes.
So
Oh,
they
okay.
weren't, you see, the students weren't only children,
Yes.
some of them were,
Yeah.
older, sort of in their
Yes. All the
20s. And
yeah.
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 Just
Yeah.
finishing
So
their schooling then basically.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I think this
Okay,
is
that's
quite
great.
typical in Australia. I remember
Okay.
because I spent a few years there for my PhD, and I was tutoring a class, and there's someone doing a degree, and he was 40 years old. So for
Mm.
me, it was
Oh,
very
really?
hard to
Yes.
tutor a class, and
Mm,
there's someone
mm.
who's 40 years old. and he did not take me seriously because he just thought this young, inexperienced person tried to
Yeah.
teach me math, and it was very difficult for me to balance that because I have students who are 19, 18, and some of them were in their 20s, and then there's this person who's 40,
Yes.
which is very strange.
That
Yeah,
that's hard.
that is
I can
hard. Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's an experience in itself. I feel like, but
Yes.
this in Australia, I think
Yes.
it's quite common that people just took gap years, probably
Yes.
working, and then they decide,
Yes.
okay, it's time for me to get my
Yes.
education sorted, and then
No,
and this is not the government's actually quite supportive of these things. So I think it's actually good
Yes.
that
no, it
people,
is
it's never
good.
too late for anyone to learn, right? So
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
they probably got that right. Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mandy, we have to bring this up every time mathematics education is mentioned, and it's something to do with South Africa. It's of course the state of our education level.
Mm,
The TIMSS results always brought up, and
mm.
I remember a few years ago when we improved from the bottom of the list at TIMSS to maybe second to last, or maybe we were third to, doesn't matter. We were
Oh,
not that
wow.
high.
Yes.
We were not that
No.
high. And
Okay.
there's this little
Mm,
celebration that we're no
mm,
longer at the bottom of the list. But I still think this is not a good situation because they're testing fourth graders and eighth graders, I think. But the students that we have writing these tests are actually fifth graders and ninth graders respectively.
Oh wow.
So I think we're
gosh.
it's a dire situation, I think.
Mm,
But could you comment on this situation? Do you feel that it is a systemic issue? I have absolutely no idea what actually is happening, especially from us looking
Yeah.
looking at it
mm,
from the university side. It's so easy for us to sort of just point fingers and say that the schools are not
mm.
doing
Doing their
good
bit.
enough jobs, yeah, to
Mm,
prepare students to come to the university. But is it maybe something that we could also do from the university side? So this is what I want us to maybe have a discussion on.
mm. Look, it's yeah, it obviously is a problem. I mean, education in general, it's not just
Mm,
mathematics, but education
mm,
in general is a problem in South Africa. I don't know why in particular, because the, the amount of money we spent on education in this country is
mm,
actually a large portion of the budget.
mm,
So I tend to I tend to blame SADTU because they basically don't want any kind of controls on teachers, and I think one doesn't want to be policed, but if you have a good attitude and you have a professional attitude, you don't really need to be policed. But I think the problem in South Africa is that a large proportion of the teachers do not have a good attitude or professional attitude to the
mm,
teaching or to teaching in general, and that is why it, they can basically do what they like, and they don't they can't be doing their jobs if things are as bad as they are.
mm,
In terms of fixing it, I mean, I look at the statistics, and it's horrifying when you see that when you actually look at the number of schools that produce the university entrance. We're not talking about university graduates. We're talking about the
mm,
university entrance,
mm,
and it's a very small number of schools that produce the university and entrance for mathematics.
mm,
Well, for science. People that come through with over 50% maths mark. When you look at the number, it's actually an appalling number. So, and obviously it must go back to the primary schools as well, because
mm,
with all these ANA tests and what you're talking about as well. Um, I don't know how to solve that one. But I mean, every year when I look at the stats, I'm appalled that
mm,
that there are so few um, pupils that actually pass. When you look at the vast number that actually write matric, for instance, such a
Right.
small percentage gets over 50% for maths. It's very scary, and they have to feed all the universities.
Yeah.
So
And even
it's
50% is at the moment not even good enough
no,
for
it
most of
isn't.
the, the sciencey degrees at least.
Yeah.
So even though you can get university entrance, you might not get a degree entrance with that. So I mean,
Yeah.
No.
that is not good.
Yeah.
But what you mentioned about the people that almost anybody can become a teacher at this point, basically, and I found that as well with like when I was in high school, like after high school, all of the people that were just not sure what they wanted to do, they just became teachers, and I don't think they have a love for teaching. So I don't think that the interaction between the students and the teachers are as good anymore because of this. That they are just it's just a job. It's not
Right.
like you're loving it.
Yeah, it's
I
kind of like
felt,
an afterthought, right? So it's
yes,
sort of, I
exactly.
don't know what to do with my life. Let me go and
Yes,
teach instead of,
yes,
I'm so passionate. I want to change someone's life. Let me become a teacher.
yes, yeah,
The attitudes are so different.
yes.
I
So
mean,
we,
I have many funny stories of saying to certain, I have girls in particular that I said it to, you're very good at explaining. You should maybe think of becoming a teacher. And the one girl turned around and said, my mother said she spent a large amount of money on my education. She's certainly not going to, support me becoming a teacher.
a teacher.
As a teacher. So being teaching is such the lowest of the low. But then it isn't encouraged by the fact that the requirements to do education these days, I think, are one of the lowest requirements out of any degree at
Yeah.
university.
Hmm.
So you're not encouraging the cream of the crop either.
Right.
No.
Right.
So, but then again, if so few people want to become teachers, you can't make the requirements too high either. So it's a bit
Yeah.
of a catch-22 situation.
Yeah. It's
But
very, very complex, the situation then.
It's very,
Yeah.
very complex.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
my maths teacher, who encouraged me to I actually owe becoming a maths teacher to my maths teacher, because she always had far more confidence in me than I had in myself. I had very many other ideas about what I was going to do. And she convinced me to do, I wasn't even going to do maths. So she said, no, you must do maths. Just do maths one. You'll enjoy it. So I did. And then the education department said, oh, you must do maths too, because then we'll give you a loan. Okay, I'll do maths too. Fine, no problem. And Mum, and she actually used to pride herself on every year she produced a maths teacher out of her class. So that year I was her maths teacher, and the previous year somebody else, and etc. Well, I don't think, when I think back, I have produced a few maths teachers that I've met at IEB conferences and things like that,
Hmm.
but not very many. I think I've identified two maths teachers that have come out of my teaching, but I don't think any others. So anyway, two's better than naught, isn't it? So,
Yeah. Yeah. But
but
is it true that well, this is my own observation. So every time I talk to someone who said I hate mathematics or I didn't enjoy mathematics in school, what is the point of mathematics? If I try to sort of get to the bottom of it, why did they hate mathematics? Typically, it is, well, let's say
the
most of
teacher,
the time it's because of the teachers. Yeah, they would
yes,
say I
yes,
had a terrible teacher. I had a terrible
mm,
teacher. My teacher was not an inspiring teacher or something like this. So
mm,
I really think that this is a profession that needs to be taken seriously. And yeah, it's sad to hear that as Belinda said earlier, some of her friends,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna be a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, good for you. But
mm,
I think one really needs to get that passion to really, I can change someone's life. It's kind of as important as a doctor, right? You save people's lives, but this is you're changing someone's trajectory
mm.
of where their future is going to be. So it should be taken seriously, I think.
I don't think there is an answer to this. I mean,
No.
there isn't,
No,
and I don't think
no.
anybody can solve it. It's
Mm,
just you can. I suppose you can just try your best. Everybody that is a teacher, but again, like you
yeah.
say, there is just some people that just they are just in it for the money or something, for the money, if that
For the
makes
Mm.
money.
sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
the huge amount
But
of
yeah.
money that you get paid
Yeah.
as a teacher.
Well, it's just a job.
It's just a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah,
No,
so
I don't think there is a solution, unfortunately.
it is actually a wonderful job if you
Yes.
enjoy it.
mm.
As I've always said, it's the only job that will pay me to talk all day, and people actually have to listen to me. So,
Yeah.
so um,
That's
and
quite true.
it
Mm.
is rewarding, not
Mm.
only with results.
Mm.
It's rewarding in the sense that you build relationships with people, and you and if you teach pupils for a number of years, you get to know them, and you get to know their strengths and weaknesses, and then
Mm.
you actually can. And as you say, sometimes you feel, well, I think I've ignited a bit of interest in this one,
Mm.
and and it's amazing how easily satisfied we are when um, just this year, one of the girls that I taught said, "Oh, that is so amazing!" When I showed her the quadratic formula, that is so amazing, and just little things like that.
Yes,
You
Mm.
think,
yes,
somebody was inspired by that, and that is
yes,
just
Mm.
that was the, and then, another lesson. Oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Just little things like
yes,
that, so they actually make things worthwhile.
yes.
Yeah.
No.
Just it's little bits
Mm.
that you feel that you are making a difference.
Yes.
Mm.
That
Mm.
it's not a wow, I'm so wonderful every day, because after you've had a bad lesson, you think, oh,
Mhm.
that
Mm.
wasn't so good. But in general, it's
Mm.
you feel at the end of a year when the pupils have gone through and they've written those exams, you think I've done something.
Yes.
They well set up for whatever they want to do, and
Yes.
that's rewarding enough. Um,
Mm.
but yes, bigger problems of mathematics in the country are. All I can say is that I just do my little bit, and I
Yeah.
just hope that because I've taught some people well, that they will be able to do whatever they want to do, because that's the problem, that if
Mm.
they if they don't get into their courses, then their careers are stunted, and you feel
Mm.
that it's a job well done and it's
Mm.
worthwhile. But
Yes.
both of you must feel that as well.
Yes. No. Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a student last semester, because I this is only my second year actually properly teaching, and she wasn't like the best student in the class, but she was a good student. But she said that she actually was so glad to have taken this course, because it really um, renewed her love in mathematics. Her passion in mathematics, and that was just so nice to hear. Because even though it's not necessarily something that she was very good at or anything, it just that passion, that was for me very
Mm,
nice to know
mm,
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it is rewarding in those. Sometimes you just, oh goodness me, I don't want to do this anymore,
mm.
like you said. But there
Mm.
is really nice, very very nice. Just that little bit, like one day or something. It
Yes,
it,
one
it is
one
really,
little compliment can make up for
yes,
a lot.
yes,
A
Yeah.
lot of
yes,
Yeah.
things that are difficult. You've had a
yes,
lot of troubles, and a lot of things that haven't gone right. Just one little compliment can actually make
yes,
everything perfect again. So,
yes.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, you feel like you made a difference.
Yeah. I actually had two education students at one point in my class. I cannot remember what year was it. I want to say 2018. So I was teaching second year math, and there were two education students. And at the end of the semester, they came to my office and they said, "Oh, we just want to first apologize and then thank you." And I said, "Like, apologize for what?" And then they said, "No, when we first saw you as our lecturer, we thought, oh man, we got a female lecturer. How good can she be?" And sort of
Goodness me.
yeah, they sort of thought that I could not teach this subject properly.
Oh my
And
soul.
then yeah, afterwards, after throughout the semester, they felt that they were so inspired, and they really liked my teaching style. And then then they decided to come to my office to offer the apology, even though they never said it to my face that they they didn't have the confidence in me. But I really appreciated that
Yes.
there were two boys actually, and then they said that they were so inspired, and it renewed this sort of passion for teaching, that they see someone can teach in a certain style that they want to emulate, and this they're gonna bring forward. And I sort of just tell them, yes, please be the best mathematics teacher possible, because we need you in this country.
Yes, no, we really do.
So I said that thank you for telling me this, and I wish you all the best for your career, and be the best mathematics teacher you could. So yeah, something like that. It's just made my day, made my year, in
Mm,
fact.
Mhm.
yeah, I
No, no,
don't
that's
think they
very
know
nice.
how these little things, how much they mean really often, but
Mm.
that's what they do. It's like at the end of the year when you want those cards that say nice things to you.
Yes.
You forget about the gift, but it's the
Yes.
cards
Yeah.
that actually are worthwhile, the words,
The
as long as
words.
they
Yeah.
are well meant and haven't been written by their mothers, which often they
Yes.
might be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what your opinion and feelings are about, how prepared the students get for university at this point anymore. Because I know from when I started in 2009 at university, and now it's much different.
Mm,
The level, at least at university first year. So
mm.
I mean, it has to have decreased a bit for some reason. So I don't know
Yeah.
what your opinion is on everything like that.
Yes, well, I mean, I can see a definite decrease in certainly in things like the Euclidean geometry. That is a sure sign. Um, when I first started teaching, there was higher grade mathematics. In fact, I
Mm.
wrote higher grade mathematics exams myself, and then they changed the system, and they changed it, I think, in 2008, where instead of
Yes.
having higher grade, standard grade, then there was just one level,
Yeah.
and then they introduced mathematical literacy, and um, the standard definitely decreased.
Mm.
The maths papers were much too easy, much too easy,
Mm.
and in particular, as I say, the Euclidean geometry, trigonometry was actually, it was watered down a lot. But
Mm.
the standard has improved again.
Oh.
It's definitely getting things. The exams are getting harder again.
Hmm.
Not quite to the same level as higher grade maths, I must say, but it's not quite the same thing because they've introduced a fair amount of stats and probability, which was never there when I wrote matric as well.
Hmm.
The calculus they've introduced. I somehow feel that they could actually put other stuff into the syllabus rather than the calculus, because the calculus is taught in such an elementary manner that at university, I first met calculus at university, and I don't think school prepares the students that
Mm.
much for the
Mm.
calculus. It's so watered down that they develop
Yeah.
wrong notions because they only deal with polynomial functions, nothing
Yeah.
complicated. They don't
Mm.
are clueless about limits, and um, so the certain preparations in terms of the syllabus, I think, are almost counterproductive. That and if they do AP maths, I think that is very helpful because then they meet integral and differential calculus and various
Mm.
other things as well. And also the level of that, the questioning is much of a much higher level than
Mm.
in the matric papers. Um, so I think when it comes to university, I know that there are certain problems, like for instance, logs are not taught very well, and when they get to university, they always struggle with logs.
Mm.
And also they're not also we don't spend enough time teaching them how to logically write mathematics.
Mm.
So I think that does have an effect on how, because at university I think I always say to John, but you kind of expect them to write mathematics and they don't really get taught, and there's this big gap in
Mm.
between. But but how to use notation. Usually notation is bad. They don't really know how to express themselves. And that's another reason for continuing with Euclidean geometry. I think, that is one of the reasons that we continue to have it in the syllabus, because at least it's one way of introducing the concept of a proof and logical progression and logical thinking and that. But so yes, I think there is always a bit of a divide between what you at university expect of the incoming first years and how they're prepared. So most of them think that mathematics, you just need a recipe and an algorithm, and that will be fine. This notion of generalizing things, most of them do not have that concept when they come to you. And I think maybe a bit of time could be spent in the beginning of the year to try and, first of all, help them to write things logically, and this concept of generalizing ideas. So I think things are improving again in terms of standard, but there's still some way to go. I think to actually I still feel that there's a big gap between grade 12 and
first year.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm not too sure if that they don't do the 6 trig ratios anymore, that most of them focus on 3 unless they do AP math. So some of them have never even heard of sec and cosec and cot and etc.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, these little things like this that they just expected to, these are the reciprocals, or, these are the co-functions, etc. And they haven't ever met them before. So I don't know if that was what you were wanting to.
Yes,
it's very helpful.
Yeah, sorry, I am also just processing everything.
Yes. No, this is very helpful because if we have expectation, but the other side just basically not ready for it, I think we should meet somewhere, right? We should not sort of pushing from both sides and not getting anywhere. So probably this idea of having just a week or two of teaching them how to write mathematics, which is actually not easy.
No.
And so I'm assuming this Euclidean geometry was done in terms of you start with the postulates and then you start proving theorems concerning the geometry, right?
Most of the pupils, when they write mathematics, I mean, if I think of the syllabus, majority of the syllabus is just using algorithms, solving equations, drawing graphs, even optimizing. I mean, that's all of these are. But the only part of the syllabus where they actually have to construct an argument would be in the Euclidean geometry. They have to prove something or show something. Occasionally in the algebra, sections, they might have to show this equation is, for calculus, for instance, show that the surface area of the shape is whatever. But that's not really a logical argument. It's more getting a formula for this and substituting it in to something else. But the only section where they really are having to construct arguments is the Euclidean geometry. And you don't even do that in first year, but I think it's still it's still valuable, the logical
so that is now in the syllabus, like the actual normal syllabus. Because when I did it, actually, because I wrote matric in 2008, so we didn't have that higher grade standard grade. We had the
yes, I think you were the first year.
Yes. So we sort of, I don't think it was done in every school, but in our school at least, we had the 2 papers, Maths 1 and Maths 2. And then we had this extra where we had the stats, probability type stuff, and the Euclidean geometry. And I always said that, Maths 3. Yes. And I always said that should be included. Well, not necessarily the probability and the stats and all those things, but the proving, because that taught me a lot, at least.
Mm.
So that is now, as far as I understand, back into the normal
Yes, that
syllabus.
is. They've
Okay, that's
incorporated
great.
the paper 3 work is all incorporated.
Yes,
It's essentially paper 2, really. I mean, well,
yes.
no, yeah, stats. The probability is actually in paper 1, but
Okay,
most of that has been incorporated into paper 2, and then the probability into paper 1.
yes,
Um, so yes, so there's that sort of aspect to trying to get them to construct arguments, even in
yes,
probability. Remember, there's a certain amount
yes.
of proving things are independent or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but but that's about the only thing that I can think of that
Mm,
where, and then suddenly I see show that this is an even function or an odd function.
yeah.
And they don't have an idea. They have no idea how to actually go about showing that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's clear from what I see is being written in tests that they have no idea.
Okay. Mm.
So,
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I remember teaching this analysis second year. This is where they, for the very first time, have to be extremely rigorous. And one
mm.
student said to me, "This isn't math." And I thought to myself, "What?" Because yeah, I think for the student, it's exactly what you said, Mandy. Is that
Yeah.
math is just recipe, it's just algorithm.
Yes.
I see it has to. I have to calculate something.
Mm.
Whereas in analysis, one of our standard first uh, tutorial question is prove that if a is a real number, a times 0 is equal to 0 from the axioms,
Mm.
and they start like, this is obvious. What do you
Yes.
mean prove? So I definitely
Yes.
understand the importance of what you learn from this Euclidean geometry syllabus.
Yeah.
Is because you
Mm.
start with the postulates, and then you
Yes.
work from there and you build the
Yeah.
theory, right? It is
Mm.
exactly what we do
Mm.
Yes.
in second year analysis. You have the 15 axioms for the real numbers, and you try to prove everything that you know about real numbers,
Yes.
the
Yes.
multiplication property and all of these things. And it's it's very strange for the students, but that you
Yes.
really have to sort of switch something inside their mind to understand that this is the rule of the game now, and it's very hard to get them into that
Mm.
mindset. Yeah.
And
So
it's
definitely, I think it's
difficult
important.
anyway, isn't it? Because
It is
because
difficult
it
anyway.
is. And when if you haven't been shown how to do it, I suppose it's kind of
Yeah.
impossible. So
Yes.
I do
Yes.
sympathize with
Yes.
how they
Yes.
feel. Mm.
But it is something that I think a public opinion that mathematics is simply arithmetic, is simply we're just
Yeah.
playing with
Mm.
sums in our offices as mathematicians. But that's not what we do,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Mm.
we I always say that mathematics is a thinking style. It's a way of approaching something rather than I need to calculate something. I mean, calculators can do that, and all these fancy programs
Mm.
that we have, the technology that we have right now, whatever software we have can
Mm.
do this much faster than we can. So
Yes.
why are we try to train ourselves to become calculators? That's not the point. The point is,
Mm.
how do you construct logical arguments, and yeah, basically it's just a way of thinking, a way of approaching something. So this I think it's very common that people think mathematics is simply just a calculation game.
Mm.
I think the thing as well with at least high school maths is that there's so few people that go into the type of math degrees that we would have, or that like actual mathematics degrees. That is why it is like that. That's all they have. That is what they did in school. So that's all they
Mm.
know is these
Mm.
recipes. So even any other type of degrees, I mean physics or I don't know astronomy and stuff. Those things they use a lot of maths.
Mm.
So there is quite a lot, but the majority of people don't go into these areas. So
Mm.
I think that is the big problem with that that notion
But at least
from the
there's a bit of
public.
an enigma. It says, "Oh, a mathematician! Wow."
Yes, very true. Yeah, no, they always think you're like the smartest person if they hear you're a mathematician or something, and they're like, "Well, I'm not so sure,
So
but
true.
I have one more question. Could it also be perhaps that mathematics is difficult for students because perhaps the way it is typically taught is in some sense out of context. What by that what I mean is, so I recently had a conversation with someone about when we teach calculating integrals. So you have integral, I don't know, from 0 to 5 of x squared dx, and then you say 1 over 3 x cubed, etc., etc., etc. But just the ability to write integral x squared dx equals a third x cubed, da da da. This is a piece of history, right? Because the notion of derivative and integral without the fundamental theorem of calculus, which is something that was achieved by people like Newton and Leibniz. This is something that it's a huge leap in logic. Essentially, it's a huge leap in mathematics that once they found it, and now we're all just using it, right? So what I'm trying to say is that could it be that we don't appreciate these calculations, if you will, that integral this equal that, because the historical context is not given, perhaps, or just simply what does it mean when you integrate is not given properly to the students, and they sort of just feel these things like a machine, right? I feed a function, I feed a polynomial, pops this other polynomial, and it becomes something that you lose the actual meaning, where it's actually a huge piece of history that these brilliant mathematicians came up with, and then now we have the connection between the two notion of derivative and integral from this fundamental theorem of calculus. So would maybe I don't know, like a side class of history, or just simply giving a bit more context to mathematics, would that help maybe?
I think having context is probably, the teacher feels good about giving the context, because
Right.
I think it always makes things, to me, it makes things, if you put them in the right frame, it's like a painting. It kind of makes it more understandable. But I honestly don't know if that makes that much difference to the students, because look, let's face it, they can differentiate. I can teach pupils who have no concept of what they're doing. I can teach them how to differentiate. Okay, integrate's a little bit harder, and that's my gripe about the calculus in matric. There's very little real explanation about why you're doing it, and this becomes very clear when you're doing the applications and you're optimizing. I can tell you quite honestly, most of these students do not really know. They first of all, they get very confused about, especially when there's a context. If you've got a speed, distance over time, so you've got this function, and then you want to find the rate of change, and you have to say, well, look out for the key word rate, and that means differentiate. It's like, oh, we see this word, right? This triggers this response. Most of them do not have any real understanding of what's going on in calculus. They really don't. And you can, and even if you try and explain the history and why they did it and where it came from, the bottom line is, as soon as you apply something, or you have to apply, and you have to choose a number of different formulas, for instance, and you have to choose what you do to them, it's already difficult. And mathematics, you're never going to get away from the fact mathematics is a difficult subject. If you can be taught to do certain things, but to actually really understand what you're doing, that requires ability. And it's a talent that some people have. And honestly, after all my years of teaching, it hasn't really changed. I realized that you can teach pupils to do the basic things, to understand basically what's going on, but to have real understanding, and that requires a certain amount of talent, and some people have it and some will never have it. And that's unfortunately just the way it is.
Yeah.
And you just have to reconcile yourself to that fact that
And
in
interest,
teaching you have to
perhaps.
do it. And interest as well. And also some of it is perhaps maturity. They not really ready for some of these concepts. Back to geometry again. If you're teaching young pupils about axiomatic geometry and constructing arguments, if they're too young, they really don't understand how to do it. And they get older, they're a bit better. So it also has to do with maturity. So no, it's not it's never an easy subject to teach, as you know. It's not. It's difficult, and you have to be creative about the way you do it, and try and not leave any gaps, and keep going back and checking that they understand, and it's real understanding. That's a difficult one to quantify. They can do it. They can get 100% for the test, but do they really understand it?
No, it's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I am just very glad to see that there are still teachers that are also passionate about the teaching, because I don't think you get that many, like we've mentioned previously. And I'm just glad. I'm just happy for what you are doing for the future of our mathematics. I don't know what you call it, like students.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
No, I feel the same way. I think it's nice to hear a teacher that said, I'm inspired by my students.
Yes.
And then from what I hear from our conversations, Mandy, is that you also don't stop learning.
No, but
and I think that's very
the
important.
thing. I mean, you'll never. That's the whole point. That
yes.
And I'm unapologetic if I make a mistake or if I don't know something. I'll say, I'm sorry, I don't know that, but I'll find out and I'll tell you tomorrow, or whenever I can find it. Does help having a husband who's a mathematician as well, because then he'll come up with. And it is actually interesting. People say, "Oh, you talk about mathematics at the dinner table." Well, sometimes we do actually.
Sometimes we do.
Yeah, sometimes we do, not always. And then sometimes he'll mention interesting things, and then of course it's going to go back into my classes. And so you'll ask things, do you know that if you had a number line and if you got your pencil and you put it on the number line, what is the probability of hitting a rational number? And they're all thinking about it and they're guessing, and so things like this. So you'll never, if you think that you know everything, then you may as well just give up, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, Mandy, do you perhaps have any advice for our students who are listening? Maybe some of them are education students who are about to be teachers. So perhaps you have a general advice maybe to all students studying mathematics, and particularly for those that want to become teachers.
Well, I'd say that it is a very rewarding job, that I've been doing it for a long time, but no class is ever the same, because every class has individuals in it who are different. So even though you might be teaching the same. Some things I think I have taught for 30 years, more than 30 years, but every lesson is always different. So if you want to do something that you actually are doing it, improving, if you want to make a difference, if you want to make the world a better place, I don't think there's a better job than to be a teacher. And it's obviously I'm a maths teacher, but I could quite easily have been another kind of teacher. So I think the teaching profession is actually a wonderful profession, that you develop as a person, you develop young people, and it's actually fun, because it's a job where you meet young people and you converse with young people, and you never feel old because you're dealing with young people, and you kind of identify with them. So you always learning. You always they learning from you, but you're also learning from them. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's a fun job. It really is. It's
It
most of
is.
the not always, but most of the time it's a fun job.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much, Mandy, for
Thank you so much.
for coming on to the podcast with us. And yeah, we wish you all the best for your new job. We hope you
thank
enjoy
you.
it, and yeah, continue to inspire next generation of mathematicians.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thanks a lot.
much.
All right, then. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.